My dear friends, welcome to another episode of the Inevitable Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Pedro Sorin. I spend my time being a venture capitalist, author, entrepreneur. Work hard trying to lose all my COVID belly. And that has been working out pretty well, actually. But, I'm also the founder, managing partner of Atman. We're a close community of founders and investors playing long-term games together. As you know, my life mission is to partner with inevitable people. And in this episode, I had the honor of talking to my friend Alexandre Liuzzi, or Alex Liuzzi, I guess, for all the Americans listening. He's the founder of Remessa Online, which is a Brazilian company founded in 2016, providing international payments and money transfer solutions through a robust cross-border infrastructure. They've been around for about 5 years and grew from a team of 3 to a little over 200, with over 350,000 customers, having transacted more than $3 billion, over 527,000 operations. So you can say that they, know a thing or two about moving money around the world. And in this episode, aside from talking about Remessa, we also dive into Alex's background in asset management, investment banking, all the lessons that he has learned building his own venture builder in LATAM, and then his focus and decision to dedicate more and more time towards Remessa Online. I hope you like it. I really enjoyed recording this episode. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for being here. I think very much appreciate our relationship. I think we've known each other for a while now, huh? Maybe 7 years, probably? Something around that.
Exactly, 6 to 7 years. Since the beginning, since it all started. For me, as entrepreneur.
That's right. And you were born and raised in Sao Paulo, right? Okay. And how was the decision to actually go and study abroad in Chicago?
It was, something that I've always wanted to do since college. It takes back to I wanted to do an exchange program in Germany back in high school. It was going to be the first year of high school. Obviously, I screwed up. I was pretty, back then agitated. So I ended up not being allowed by my father to leave 1 month abroad in Germany. I was looking for, I got wasted. But I had 14, 15 something. And then, I got accepted in the program. So as a celebration to the acceptance of the program, I got wasted. And then, my father was like, okay, if you're doing this here, imagine what you're going to do in Germany. And then, I was not allowed to go. But then anyways, the fact that when I was looking for a college in Brazil, I was looking for colleges that had an exchange program. And then specifically the ones that could have, one that could leverage my career. So since the beginning, I was looking to do the exchange program. And that's how I started. I started in the college in Brazil. Now it's called INSPER. Back then it was IBMEC. And then since the first semester, I was like, okay, I want to do an exchange program. How do I qualify? They required you to have, good grades. You couldn't have any, you had to have kind of like scoring in the top 10% of the class. At the time, it was very competitive, the process. And then I was able to get selected to the program for University of Chicago. And that's how I got there for the first quarter. And then I decided to stay for another quarter. And then in the second quarter, I developed relationships with a few of the professors. I was going to the office hours. And back then I was very determined that I wanted to go for an MBA or maybe a PhD in the US. And because of the grades I had and the relationships, they invited me to transfer. So I transferred college to the University of Chicago, and then ended up doing like
Nice.
3 years there.
Nice. That's great. What was your GPA? Nice.
3.76, I think, for economics, and then 3.5 overall. I was Dean's List. That means it's not honors, because in Chicago you have to do a application to be honors, but it's above the average of top
Nice.
average of the school.
It's funny. So about the MBA, like I think you and I think we've both really considered it and ended up not doing it. Today, for me, I would never do it. I see it as a massive waste of time for opportunity cost and financial cost. I can just grab that money and invest and learn what I need to learn on a day-to-day basis. But what? And I went deep into qualifying if I wanted to do an MBA or not. There were two specific moments in my life. I was counting, then I had a spreadsheet. I interviewed 54 MBAs just to really get you that decision. I visited every campus. So how was your decision making towards doing an MBA or not doing an MBA? Because I think that's a question that a lot of people in our world have, right?
Yeah. So basically, the when I was at Velt, at the fund, you know, they they also thought it would be a waste of time. We would I was already evolving there a lot. So when the opportunity arose, it was when I left the fund, and I was looking for getting something in tech. So I can explain later how was this movement, but when the MBA was possible for me, because of the fact that my career was developing a lot, I didn't find time for it. When it became possible, it was right before I started more ventures, and I started my whole story here that led up to Remessa Online. So the fact was that I ended up using the money that I was going to use to an MBA. I invested everything in starting eGenius back then, and I had a real life MBA. So that's what happened. So the decision was, okay, I started, and then okay, it doesn't make sense anymore for me. I'm learning so much by doing it. So an MBA is not
Yeah,
an
for
option
me
now.
it was similar as well. I remember having the conversations, and folks were like, "Look, I'd love to. I'm doing the course so that I can work at a venture-backed company that goes really well." And I was already at SendGrid, and then we had a great outcome, went public, and they were acquired. And then the second time was like, I want to get a job in venture capital, and I had a job in venture capital. So I will not deny I do have a few gaps in terms of hard skills, but the reality is for instance, that's something that I think people overlook quite a lot, is that in life, I think it's so important for you to learn how to learn. And then you break problems apart in small little pieces, and you learn what you need to learn at that moment. So, the first exit, I was responsible for taking care of the first exit for the first fund at One VC, and I've never done that before. And I was a little nervous, but at the same time, I got it done. And you had good lawyers, and that's it. You learn on the go. And I also for all the classes that I've watched at all the best schools, so Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Columbia, MIT, Anderson at UCLA, Booth. I always felt that there's just like this 40% of almost like an etiquette that is just really weird. I don't like the way that the classes are structured with the little plates and the names and people just raising their hands, and it seems so artificial because I think we play in the arena every day building businesses, and it's nothing like that. So, for me, so that was kind of like having those two experiences for me. It didn't add up, especially with the debt. And you look at look, I can just, it's more productive. You can get that money, buy Amazon stock, you'd be better off.
And it's I do believe that it makes sense for people that are looking to recycle the career. Sometimes they're looking for some time to get an idea, or in terms of network. I do see there's a lot of networking that could leverage connections, raise capital, or even having someone to partner with to start a business. But when things are in motion, I don't see a reason to stop what you're doing to do an MBA. It's tough. You have so much. If you have the discipline, there's so much you can learn by yourself. There's so much you can exchange knowledge, and then you can build your own network. You did that, Pedro, and that's something I admire on you. The way that
Thank
you
you.
hustled your way into venture capital. But there's a way. You didn't have to do any Ivy League school to create the connections, and it is something that you can build yourself. So I do see that there are applications for some people, but when things get in motion. So for now, the fact that I've learned so much this past 6 years by doing it, I don't I consider myself already with an MBA in entrepreneurship because of the mistakes
Exactly.
I did. So I didn't have to work on the case. The case studies were the real life, and I fucked up a lot of them. So then you can know what not to do the next time,
Yes.
and get
Well, and I think
shortcuts.
soon enough, your company will then probably be like a case study in one of those schools. I mean, I've seen that happen so many times with all these entrepreneurs. It's just like they don't do the classes, but you go there and you kind of tell people the story. It's a negative thing. I think it does fit a certain profile, and it is a good thing. And I very much appreciate many of the relationships I've built by just being around that ecosystem. It's just not for me, and but I think that it has its place in the world. And then,
Definitely.
so you before tech, let's even get into like before tech. So you were a professional investor in asset management, right? And so how is that? Like, basically, we always like to learn basically what was in your mind when you decided, okay, this is the career path I'm going to take once I graduate, and why? Like, what was going in your mind?
Yeah. So this has both to do with like professionally, but also personally for me. I started financial market investment banking first, and then doing M&As in New York, and then I moved back to Brazil and I joined Velt. Back then it was called M Square as an analyst for investing in Brazilian equities. But as a fundamental investment, like value investing, Warren Buffett style, you have to research a lot. You do a lot of research before you actually buy a position in the company. You look at the stock as you're buying a stake on a business that you want to be a part of. So it is, basically fundamentally speaking, understanding the business and knowing the people that are running the business if you want to be part of that story. So you have to study everything that is happening with the business. And at the time, I was very lucky because TOTUS was buying DataSul in Brazil, so the largest competitor in ERP. And the discussion it was 2008, Pedro. So the discussion back then was how license-based models from ERP will survive the new SaaS model. So it was the beginning of SaaS, and Salesforce was the case study back then. So you had to study what was happening in the US with this, the SaaS ecosystem, how companies were pricing. You were going to lose the license-based model and also the maintenance plus implementation, but you had a subscription. Would you be able to break even back then? So in order to understand what could happen to TOTUS, I had to study what was happening to Salesforce in 2008. And then by looking into what was happening to Salesforce, the same like reports were also discussing Facebook, Uber, Groupon. And then I was like, whoa, I got like a bitten by this, this bug that was always in my mind. I continue at M Square Velt, looking into payment companies, Redcar, Cielo. So, I stayed there for 6 years, but back of my mind, I was always thinking, well, what is happening in this new market, this new ecosystem? A lot of what I've understood about competitive advantages, how to, create this barrier of entrance. They were being questioned. New models were arising in the US. So I was like really, really curious to know more about it. And then when I looked in what I was doing, technically speaking, there were not many technology companies in Brazil, listed companies. So that was 2012, 2013 when I started questioning myself what I was doing. So there were like five companies that could be considered technology, but they were
There's
not actually tech.
yeah, it's still a problem today. I mean, some of our friends have already gone public, and now they're like the first ones out there, but it's still like it's quite scarce.
Exactly. But there are more opportunities. Like there are like Stone. There's more like technology based, and it's a new model in terms of like execution. XP, you could say, some combinations more tech now than it used to be, but it's also more, more digital approach. But back then it was TOTUS, Bematec, Lynx, Redcar, and Cielo. So I was a little bit frustrated that I wanted to have more exposure to this segment, and also personally I was going through this phase of like trying to understand my purpose here, and trying to understand what I had just achieved. So 2000, my big goal was I want to become a partner in a fund, and I want to make a lot of money. So that was my first like motivation, and I like to learn a lot. I always I like to succeed in things, but my first motivation was I want to become a partner and I want to make a lot of money. So that happened quickly for me, gladly. And then it was like, okay, quickly, like 20, 26 years. And I was like asking myself, what's next? What's the next challenge? What do I want to do? What am I doing here? Am I building something, or just making money? And then that combination, looking at those stories, and of course I only knew the surface. So I was like, I was reading the stories, and the surface, the tip of the iceberg. I was like, okay, I want to go to tech. I don't know how, but I want to do something in technology. So I decided to quit and then start looking for something. I don't like to divide my heart in different things. So I decided to
Wow.
do
So
this movement. So
you
I
took cold
left the
turkey,
fund.
quit, and you were like, I'm just gonna figure out my life.
I'm going to tech. So I was like, I quit, saying I'm going to tech, but I don't know what. And they're like, how? Maybe a venture capital, maybe an MBA. That's where the MBA come in. Maybe an MBA, maybe that. And then, eventually I've been able to figure. It was like it only took like 3 months for the opportunity to arise, and then start building eGenius back then. So when you there's luck involved, of course, but when you're looking for something, when you're there working every day and studying, then it makes it easy for you to
Oh
take
yeah.
advantage
Oh
of the
no, it's
opportunity.
funny. So as you know, I just moved to Miami, so I still don't have a bunch of stuff on my walls. It's the last thing you kind of do, but I have this poster like back here that says, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So just like it's still on the floor, but it'll be up there.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's exactly it. That's it.
and but in terms of everything that you could do, why not? For instance, I mean, you were a professional investor already, so you were like, all right, I'm going to start investing as well. But then, as you were researching, instead of just trying to raise a traditional fund, eGenius, now Mar Ventures were both, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but venture builders, right? So maybe if you want to explain the difference between a venture builder and a regular fund, and why you decided to actually start a venture builder versus just a traditional fund.
I'll start answering why, and then explain the difference. But when I was leaving Velt, Mauricio questioned me about why don't you try to build a fund? Why don't you try to be invest in companies? And when I was doing the research, what I realized, Pedro, is like a lot of the big names in venture capital, they have been entrepreneurs before. They felt the pain. They've learned through the process. Most of them completed a cycle. I didn't felt that I had any not capability. I could learn the process, but I didn't feel qualified enough as an analyst sitting on a chair, and I love doing research, but you're basically sitting on a chair, you're reading a bunch of stuff, you talk to people, and then you make an opinion about something, and there's a lot of art about that. I love that fact of, trying to understand what will happen, but you've never seated on the other side of the table. So how would I, discuss an opportunity with an entrepreneur if I never been in his shoes? How would I question his decisions? Not even question his decisions, but even trying to understand where the business was going if I never, took part in creating a business. So I've decided that if I wanted to be more involved with technology, if I wanted to be a good investor in the future, I wanted to have this experience, firsthand experience by building something. So that was one of the motivations personally for me to get involved with the builder project. And then the builder project was a combination of stupidity with ambition. Uh, so I think we were a little bit arrogant back then. So we were like, okay, we have let's start something. So what can we start? So 2014 in Brazil, there were not many startups solving many of the problems that Brazil had. So we could like do a brainstorm, and then we could find six different businesses that made a lot of sense. So okay, and then we would look who is doing this business in Brazil. There was no startup. There was a lack of entrepreneurs with experience. And back then we understood that there was a combination of experience. So me, Thales had done Easy Taxi, Marcio, Arruda was from Rocket Internet. So we are like, okay, we know what we were doing. We didn't know shit. You know something, but you didn't know shit. And then we're like, okay, so why don't we do all of our ideas? That's a great idea. If let's do a builder. And later on, we realized, okay, we're probably the only builder in the world that started without money. So the builder model works. So the difference is that the venture builder in the US, what is the difference between the venture capital and a builder? The builder, you become a co-founder in the process of launching a startup. So you're not an incubator, you're not an accelerator, you actually take roles into the company. You have a structure within the venture builder, and then you launch the business together with the company, and you actually fund the early days of this business before the business raises the capital. So you take executive roles within the company. You help build part of the initial process of the company, and then the startup is able to raise its own capital, and then you would start, how to say, releasing it to the market. So that was the concept, and then we were the first ones to do it without that much money. So the first money was my capital that I was going to use in an MBA. So I've seeded the builder structure, but we were starting several businesses at the same time with not enough capital. So it was very challenging. We had to work a lot back then. So that was the combination. So we saw, and to be quite honest, most of the opportunities, I think all of the ideas we had, we didn't execute all of them, but all the ideas, I still have a deck. They became large businesses afterward that other people launched. So we were right about the opportunity of the market, the size of the market, which industries there were opportunities for disruptions. But the fact is, like, it's very challenging to do one business. If you want to do more than one at the same time, you have kind of like twice the complications, and then by doing many at the same time, you have a lot of challenges. So it was very challenging. That's why I say it's a combination of ambition and stupidity. It ended up fine into this process. I still have to see the whole movie to the end. I think I'm still in the beginning of the story of Remessa Online. But the fact that there was a lot of effort involved, and all me and all my partners, we had to work a lot to start with less money, doing more things.
Yeah, I think some of the most well-known ones in the US are probably Expa, Atomic, but it's interesting that I know
eFounders is very large in the US, but they're from
Oh,
Europe.
e-founders are
They're good
awesome.
also. They're very
I've invested in
yeah.
Aircall yeah,
Yeah, they do,
we were
yeah.
the first U.S. investors for them at the seed round. Now I think that they're like probably nearly maybe 20 million ARR. So company's doing really well, but they are very good. I think eFounders is the one of the few that really crack the code in a way where the
Yeah.
founders continue to be aligned with them 4 or 5 years down the road. I don't think that that's the case for others. I won't name names, but knowing stories from other founders, where the issue I think with the venture builder model in some ways is that you are hiring, you have to find the hired guns for the entrepreneurs that are going to kind of like run the businesses, and usually it's this combination of like skin in the game that could be disproportional, that then when success comes, because everyone has to work hard, it's never easy. So but then you start with far less equity. That was being probably the problem of Rocket Internet in the old days, right? Where we have 5%, 10% of the company, and it seems very attractive because from day one you get to have this massive salary. But people don't understand that ultimately, like, what really has it's carried interest in equity in businesses, right? Like, cash is just a way for you, and like you said, when you become a partner at 26 at one of the best hedge funds in the country, then you kind of solved all of your money problems, and then what, right? So it's actually easy to figure out a way to solve all of your money problems. I shouldn't say easy, but like if you want it, you'll find a way, right? I did not grow up with a lot of money, and it took me about 8 years. But like if I wanted today, I could retire, and I will never retire. But so there's a way, I guess. Like, it's not easy, but there's always a way. And if you think about like this misalignment, like how did you guys manage? Like what? So you did start the 5 companies, and they were underfunded. But then, you had different successes along the way, right? And certainly Remessa was the most successful out of all of them. So what was the story across even focusing, managing resources, throughout the way? And how are things today, basically?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did was we didn't have control, and we wanted to have not a very relevant stake. We had a larger stake than a venture capital, but not as other builders that were actually hiring executives that had 5%. So
That's
that
great.
was the first thing we did. So in all the companies, we started, we ended up having a minority stake, but still larger than a venture capital would be, and we paid for this additional equity with a lot of sweat, and so there was a lot of work. So my partners, co-founders, they ended up becoming full time within the companies, and that's what ended up happening with me at Remessa. So I became, after 2018, I was already spending 90% of my time at Remessa Online, and then full time since then, 2019. So there was a lot of concentration, but in the beginning, there was some activities they benefited from this division that happened. So there was some synergies that would allow us not to be that focused. So for instance, I was doing capital raising for and working kind of like this CFO of the company. So I would ended up using my network, helping raise capital for the companies, organizing the financial part, some synergy in the people department in the beginning, like helping find talent for all the companies. There was some interesting facts that like you could look for someone to work at the builder, but then you could you could work at that company, you could work in that company. So there was some positive effects of that. In terms of time management, we did organize ourselves from the builder into teams that were dedicated to the builder, to the company, to each
It's like a SWAT
startup
team,
individually.
basically, but divided per company.
Yeah, kind of like a squad for each company, And some, in the very beginning, the very early days, most of the resources were shared. And then we understood that's not going to work. So in the second year, we changed that, and then we created the squads. And then the resources that were shared were like more kind of like legal people and myself, but then the teams were already within. So for instance, Remessa Online, when it all started, from the beginning, like Marcio Williams, which now, he's responsible for technology at Remessa, he was there full time from the first days, helping developing the company. Fabio as well was there pretty much full time in the early days, helping Remessa to be built up from the ground. And as I mentioned, since the beginning, I was the one who was at the beginning more between projects, and then ended up being full time. So there was a lot of things that I've learned through this process, and focus is definitely one of them. Putting your energy, with dedication to a project, it makes a lot of difference. And also that the fact that it's very hard to align the interests when you have shared resources. So you have to be very careful in what you're going to offer in this process, because then you become kind of like a support area. And it's impressive how much value you could have just being strategic, like not with less resources being applied, but there's much more value when you are able to find a tailor-made solution for the problem that the startup's having, than to have something that is more standard that could work for all of them. So this is something that actually made me, take the decision to focus. So since then, very focused on Remessa Online.
So what do you think that made Remessa the most successful project out of the 5 ones that you guys were launching? If you had to look back and think about, and you have, and there could be internal circumstances as well as exogenous circumstances from the market itself, and timing, right? Like in our world, timing matters a lot.
Yeah, I think it's always a combination. It's like when we look at the relative aspects, it looks like I'm like, I don't want to create this like comparison, but I think Remessa, what had it was a huge market, and nobody was addressing that pain point. So that's the first aspect, so huge market. But also, Pavani, the founder and CEO, he was very aware of the pain point. He had some previous experience with, the financial aspects, but also developing. So he understood about, product. He was very, and he is very driven, like works a lot, workaholic to solve that problem. So I think that was something that helped a lot. And I think we've been able to make the right decisions from the beginning in some very complicated choices. So from the beginning, when we started, Pedro, before Remessa Online, the product was Bicambio. So we were working, like the MVP was working with paper money, delivering, this money for people who was going to travel.
And what is Remessa Online, right, for those that are listening and don't know?
Remessa Online today is one of the largest platforms for international transfers in Brazil. So we help companies and individuals in Brazil to transfer money abroad or receive money from abroad. So make international payments. With this is the functional aspect, but what we are doing is actually enabling those individuals and companies to have a global life. So we enable an individual to invest abroad, to pay for services from abroad, to travel, to pay for college, to pay for rent, to receive from investments, to sell their SOPs. If you have SOPs in startups, you can sell them using Remessa Online to receive your money from abroad. Most of the companies are, of course, structured abroad. And then what we do for businesses is help the businesses to become global. So we allow businesses in Brazil to export services. So if you have a small company, you want to access a global market, receiving dollars or receiving euros, you can use Remessa Online to issue your invoice and receive the payments. And also, if you're paying for an import, if you want to import something from abroad, you can also use Remessa Online. If you're receiving money from a venture capital, you're a startup, you can use Remessa Online. So there's a lot of frictions into this process of doing a global transaction, both sending money out abroad, also receiving money abroad. So what Remessa Online is doing is removing those frictions, so creating a full digital process, but out at the same time focusing in the experience to the final customer. So our customers, they are able to do that online. They're able to do that in an easy process, like kind of like self-service process, and pay much less than what they would pay to traditional financial institutions to do these transactions. So when we look at this whole solution, it seems, okay, it's easier just moving money away, but there is a lot of infrastructure, and there was a lot that was invested into the process of like understanding the pain point and solving that with technology. And that's where, I think that the biggest difference when you ask what went right, we're able to, when we started, we could grow much faster if we were just focusing in acquiring customers. And then I'm going to, have this average experience, and then maybe later, I'll be able to change the process. So we wanted to do both. So we focused from the beginning in understanding the pain point and investing in digitalizing the
Well,
process.
as a customer, I must say with Atman and previously as well with One VC, I love the product. It's great. It works really well, and we continue to recommend it to all of our investors or anyone that wants to move money around. And and I mean that it is a very it works really well. And
I know.
And you have great customer support as well, which is so important. I think that people don't realize, right? Like just or they do, right? Like when you really want to move money around the world, how slow it is. And it's this hidden process, as if kind of like you send an international wire. I wonder if there's just like a room full of people, like the old like telephone connectors connecting these wires to make sure what the fuck happens. Because it's just like sometimes it takes a long time and people are like, oh, give me the Swift code. Let me trace the wires. It's such an antiquated process. It's crazy.
It is, yes, and that's what we're trying to do. We want to be able to do global business one click away. So you don't want to know what's happening. You just want to be able to move your money, to receive your payment with one click. But you have to solve all of course, not only the infrastructure part, but there's a lot of compliance, a lot of KYC. You have to do that by not only facilitating the process, but doing that in accordance with the regulation. So that's what we've spent a lot of time in understanding on how we could improve the process to be more secure than the traditional process. Instead of asking for specific documentation, can we validate that online? Can we check for inconsistencies? Can we be safer than the traditional way, but still be better? And there was a lot of effort in doing that, and I think that's what makes us very different in the market, because we gained a lot of expertise in how to actually be able to translate the complications in the regulatory environment to a simple process, but we do all the checks, we comply with all of them. And I do respect those companies that look for a solution that they want to just go around the legislation, or they want to just not, they're just looking for other ways of facilitating the process, and there is, of course, there's merit in that, and most of times they are able to even change the process, the regulatory process, because they found out an easier way, and we do that as well. That we can, when we find something that doesn't make sense to be asked for, and then we can do it safer and still complying with the regulatory part by doing it with a new process, and then we suggest that to the regulator to improve the process as well. But what made the difference for us, I think, was a lot of the focus in we want our customers to be happy, so we did a lot for the customers. Back in the days when we were delivering money, there's like funny stories about how even like some people know Pavani personally because of the deliveries that he did, because there was a problem with the broker firm that was responsible for doing the deliver, and actually Pavani and Stefano back then, there were a couple of times that they would receive the money and they would like deliver by themselves to all the customers, in order to the customer, even going to the airport. There's a story that this our customer was going to travel, and then when he reached, the delivery was missed by the brokerage firm, so he was going to the airport and he was not going to have the money for his trip. So we got Stefano. Stefano hiked on a motorbike from one of those like delivery guys, paid the guy to take him to the airport, and then he went, by motorcycle to the airport to deliver the money to the customer so that the customer could fly and have his money. So, and because of that, back then it looks like those small stories, but back then there was a problem, specifically in that week, that people were not able to deliver. So a lot of our competitors, so when you create something new, there was all these websites that were offering, like 6 months after we started, they were offering the same experience. Oh, okay, we want to be able to do that. But we from the beginning, we were applying a lot of technology to facilitate the process, but also a lot of focus in customer service. So there was this turning point where we've created something that was unique. People are like, okay, this is the best service that you have. And then the decisions we made, like, okay, the international transfer market is huge. So that's when we're going to focus. The individuals, they want a simple process. So we've took risks to invest in enabling more functionalities, enabling better experience, even though there was a lot of traction going on this side of the business, that we wanted to be able to move to this whole functional aspects of international transfer. So there's, I think, a few times in our stories that we made this decision, as we did now with the B2B, and that made the whole difference for us to be.
That's great. There's a lot to unpack there, but I love the story of, I think every good company, you always have these crazy doing things that don't scale type of stories. Do you still deliver cash today for folks? Like, no, not anymore, right?
No.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, good. So, you and Pavani, you guys have known each other for about 15 years now? More than that. When did you guys meet? What's the story behind your relationship?
So we met in college before I went to University of Chicago. So Pavani started also in IBMAC. So back then we didn't connect that much. It was after I came back from University of Chicago. So I know him from college. Also, in college, we both surfed. So it was easier, we had that in common. He surfs as well, so we had this in common. So we're discussing about surfing. We did a surf trip together then, but then after I got back from University of Chicago, we ended up that one of my friends from college became is now his wife, Maira. So back then we were all hanging out together, and then we really connected. And it was back in 2007, 2006, when we, started to reconnecting back then. And then there's a lot of stories, like a lot of trips that we did. That's when we had this story on, we were traveling through California together, and then I had already my Chase account because I had worked in the U.S. So let's use the Alexandre's Chase account to pay for the trip. It's gonna be easier that way. But then we wanted to just the money from my account, we spent all the money. So I wanted to send a new transfer, and that was like 2012, 2011, 12, and we couldn't do it because we were at the U.S. There was no option for us to, start a transfer in Brazil to send the money to my account there. So that also something that marked us back then. So when Pavani he came to me in 2015 when I was starting, the venture builder project. I was already in the first year of the venture builder, and he was like, okay, there's something that we both understand there's a huge pain point, and he came back with this research. He has a 20-page research on how the size of the market, like so, what's the opportunity in the international transfer market. It was actually I still have it today with me, the first paper that he did to explain to me the pitch of what the Remessa line would
Nice,
be.
very nice. So I want to change gears completely. So, I think when I met you, you were a different pen size. And then, but it's very admirable in my, for me right now, I hit like a peak weight during the pandemic of like 206 pounds. And now I'm 198. My ideal weight is probably 178. I have a goal for like hitting that on the first week of September. So I'm losing about a pound and a half a week, which it's doable and very sustainable. But you have to completely change your relationship with alcohol and food, and that also unlocks other different superpowers. So, what was the moment that you realized, look, like I might not be having the healthiest habits right now. I'm not treating myself with the right amount of empathy and love for me, and I want to change.
Yeah, it is. It seems like it was a click, like moment, but it was, I think, a combination of factors that led me to this decision. So I always was. I've been always like kind of like overweighted, so I'm like probably now 40 pounds below what was my top
Wow, you lost
weight.
40 pounds. Amazing.
But
Well, amazing. You lost 40
uh,
pounds. 40 pounds is a lot of weight. Like if you just grab
40
a 40
pounds.
pound kettlebell and
So
imagine carrying that on your waist.
yeah, and then you can exactly. And it makes a lot of difference for a lot of things in my life now. But back then, I was not paying much attention to that. So I had this like work hard, party harder, kind of like framework. But by partying harder, also like not taking a lot of care of my body. But remember when I mentioned that the part of my decision to leave the fund and become an entrepreneur was also personal. It had to do with like this questioning that I was going through in understanding the purpose and kind of searching for more like a spiritual meaning to all of these things that were happening. And then that's when I started the journey, but I still started working in the process of like, okay, I need to take better care of myself, but I wouldn't apply that. It takes a lot of discipline, but it kind of like something clicked about 2 years ago in my mind. It was like really subtle, but it was, I think, a combination of all the things that I was reading, the meditations. I went to a lot of retreats, and in all of those processes, they kind of I came back to what I wanted to become in terms of like how I wanted to treat myself, uh, if I was as productive as I could be. All this friction. Let's use a term that we understand into this process of like you work a lot, but then you party a lot, but you have all this energy that you spend like recovering from the party, and then you eat a lot because of some frustration on I don't know, and then have all this extra weight carrying with you to do sports, and then something clicked, and then it was 2 years ago I first started like stopping drinking, and then I I started like paying a lot of attention and even researching about food, the quality, not eating processed food, trying to eat more like natural food. And then one thing led to another, and then I ended up doing like Olympic triathlon like
Nice.
2 months ago.
That's excellent.
So so in the pandemic, you reached the peak. In the pandemic, I reached my I think it was the peak of my performance, but I still want to reach back again because I had children.
Yeah.
My son was born in November, so since November I've reduced the training, but my peak was last year, and it was a combination of this, wanting to have better life, wanting to perform better, and also being able to wake up every day, and then you wake up and you say, "Fuck, no, I, I'm on. I'm full performance today. I feel great. I don't feel something is holding me back. I can do, I can train and I feel great. I can, work a lot, and then, I have energy for that. And a lot of that is related to the balance between, body, your mind, and your soul, of course, like what they mentioned. So this balance is very important. So changing my habit in food
That's
is
great.
very important.
So what is your relationship with alcohol today? 2 years later, 40 pounds.
I'm more flexible now than I was. So it started with, okay, I'm not going to drink for 2 months, nothing. And then once I've done it, I ended up being 1 year and a half without even like touching alcohol. Probably it was like I didn't drink at all. Now I'm, of course, already not only proven to myself, but I understand the benefits. So I like to have a glass of wine if I'm in an environment that people are having a glass of wine. I will have a glass of wine. I will have maybe a sake when eating sushi, but I'm not going to intoxicate, to get drunk. So I haven't been intoxicated, let's say drunk in alcohol, for 2 years and
That's great.
4 months. Right?
I look.
Now.
I think that if anyone wants to start a healthy lifestyle and lose a lot of weight and really connect with infinite intelligence, God, this bigger picture of like the realization of what makes you you and why are we here, is stop drinking. It is by far the number, at least for me, the number one habit trigger, because when you drink more, you will do worse. You just make stupid decisions across the board. You might waste your energy, by, I don't know, having meaningless sex. You might waste your energy, and then you're tired the next day, and then you eat junk because, like, when you wake up and you got a little bit of a hangover, you crave something crunchy and salty or something really sweet, and you're not operating at your best. And, for the type of work that we do, there's no room for that. And I think we are all aware of what excellence means and what excellence is, and how much you have to work towards getting there. So I believe that the relationship that we should all have with drugs is overall, and this means caffeine, and it could mean sugar, it could mean alcohol, it could mean pot, could mean psychedelics. Like, it should be a very, like, one of moderation. There are certain things that you should never try and never do, but for the most part, what you've said, I think it's the perfect type of relationship one, in my opinion, should have with alcohol, which is basically kind of like you have it, but you don't intoxicate yourself with it. And that is hard, because the propaganda of what alcohol is supposed to mean in our lives ever since we were kids is something that is so sad, of how they indoctrinate all of us. And, of course, I think, you and I believe in individual sovereignty and personal responsibility. But when you do the math, I'm like, since you were 18, 17 until now, for how many weeks were you did not drink? And I recall, I was like, oh my God, I might have had a drink every single week for the last 12 years. I was like, Jesus. And, I don't think we're supposed to live that way.
And just it is like when you take it off and then you realize what that how much better I do again. I'm not radical to a point where I say it works for everyone. I think people are able to have a balance. Some people say it doesn't impact me that much. I'm able to continue to do, and I definitely admire those people. But for me specifically, individually speaking, the impact was so negative of the hangover, of these side effects as you mentioned. Okay, you wake up, you don't feel motivated, and then you end up eating trash because you're feeling like shit, or the poor choices you made while you were drunk. Uh, so that combination for me didn't work. So and after I stopped, I've ended up discovering all this other side. So for instance, like there are things that happened with me like in the past 2 years that you know I could describe before that I was high, but I was sober as hell. So the what I felt like so like good at that moment, so like joyful. Looked like I was like I took like MDMA, but it was not like that. I was high as fuck of soberty.
That's great. No,
I
I
don't know how
think
to
the
describe it.
yogis they
And
talk a lot about that, and I have felt that.
and I felt that only after I stopped. Like it was impressive because it was like this, like biking. I started cycling. I was like biking, and then I was like at Campos do Jordão, and I was like looking at the mountain, and then I saw the sun in a specific way. I was like, fuck, and then I even cried. I was like, oh, this is so amazing. Like look at life, and I was like sober, just cycling, and I had this effect many times last year, and for me shows this evidence that you mentioned, like how you can be more connected, you can be better, you know, more aware of the present when you have less interference with your with not only I would say alcohol, but also the thoughts, the noise, anxiety. So drugs in your own mind take this can disconnect you from this process as well. Not only like alcohol, but and
Yeah, I
food
mean, because
as
food
well.
in many ways, they're also a drug, right? Like there is that moment where you're craving something warm, crunchy. It's just be craving a pizza, right? Like you want like a nice little like, and then every time you eat these types of food, I almost feel like I put my body into this weird coma. You go to a different stage that is not really productive. But what you're talking about, before moving to Miami, I spent about 3 weeks as I was transitioning in Muir Woods, and the energy of the redwoods. But that's the energy of any forest, any nature, right? Like, and every day I would go fully fasted on a long hike in the woods, and I have gotten some very interesting highs and semi like hallucinogenic like experiences with no drugs. And that was it's amazing because I think that once people realize they don't need drugs to get high on life, I think it be very powerful. It does take time, and it's a process, and it's not like, all right, like now I'm going on my hike and it's gonna happen. There are a combination of things for that to happen, but I completely understand what you're talking about. I have also cried by myself in nature, or just feeling the ecstasy of life, and it's different, right? It's difficult to understand how to describe that for someone. But for me, I was walking, and I just felt like sitting in, like looking at this waterfall, and I sat there. And what felt like 20 minutes were actually almost 3 hours. And I didn't really you kind of lose consciousness of like what's the time and space. And you're just there fully integrated. It's quite interesting.
Very.
Yes.
I know
yes.
what you mean. It's difficult to describe.
Yes.
But it's amazing, and it is, and another positive part of it is that it doesn't get you hangover.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Give you
free.
hangover. You know, you feel better. It's free. You feel great, and it's actually longer. The effect, as you mentioned. So you've probably felt it for 3 hours when you're there, but the effect that it had on your mind lasted probably like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days that you felt like, you felt re-energized by the process.
And it needs to be a sustainable process as well. I think that when this there's that Indian yogi guru, Sadhguru, you know that guy, Sadhguru. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
And he's talking about the difference between, I guess the organic realization when you open up your pineal gland and you do feel this deep connection with nature and God, versus, for instance, trying that through psilocybin, mushrooms or ayahuasca or any of these things. And then what he says and he compares is basically kind of like, if you do take these drugs, it's as if for one day you haven't, you're a billionaire. But then once the effects wear off, you continue to just be where you were. And then for a lot of people, that transition is just very hard. And for others, it unlocks a bunch of different things where it makes you want to stop. You completely stop the old habits, and then you get to a more sustainable path towards your personal growth and evolution. And so it's interesting. I think that many of the entrepreneurs that I know, that many of our common friends, you after you've make a little bit of money and then you realize, okay, what's more to this, right? Like it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be buying, if I buy more cars or more watches or better wines, none of that. That's all expedient. It doesn't really bring me peace and actual happiness, right? So I think it's admirable, man. If there's, I really, congratulations, because for losing 40 pounds is no joke. So that's really awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. All right. So, what do you think is going to be the future of Remessa? And then how do you see this third wave of crypto boom, I guess, and evolution that we're seeing right now, and if there's a fit there or not?
Yeah. Very, very distinct questions. The third one is, I think, the second one is harder to maybe explain or even. But about the future of Remessa. We just finished working on the functional aspects of send and receive. So pretty much, in the process of doing an international transfer, you have a lot of friction. So we solved that with Remessa Online, but we want to do much more for our customers. They want more. They want an international life. They want access to global financial service. So that's the next step for us. We want to be able to serve them not only with the transfer process, but also with more than just international transfer. So global wallet, especially for the small and medium-sized businesses. So we're talking about, small entrepreneurs, designers, developers, small companies that want to have access to more exports. They want to be able to collect this money abroad. They want to have an international, credit card. They want to be able to hedge their currency exposure. They want to be able to have credit associated with their international receivables. So there's all those services that we can do to help those small companies to expand globally. That's where we're moving to. And with our platform, we're also enabling our APIs, opening our APIs to increase the integration. So in the case of small companies, to integrate with the ERP, to integrate with the accounting process, so we can simplify their lives, not only the transactional part, but everything related to the international transfer. And for the individuals, so we can be able to integrate with other wallets. So we can able to give access to other customers that are not our customers yet to process their international transfers within our platform. So as we move forward here, we want to become this global ecosystem that will facilitate the retail in Brazil, both individuals and companies in Brazil, to have access to global
Great.
financial services.
And then, well, we can talk about crypto or not. It's up to you.
No, crypto, it's tricky. I think there's a lot of potential. Very, very bullish and optimistic about Bitcoin, and I do see user case for crypto also with international transfers. Specifically, when you talk about all this working capital that is required to do pre-funding, so there's a lot of inefficiencies within the global banking system balance sheet that they have in terms of like pre-funded accounts. When you were able to move money faster or move the asset faster together with the messaging system, so when you were able to communicate that you have a transfer to this financial institution abroad, but you also move the asset quicker, you're able to release all this pre-funded cash that is used and reduce the friction. So I do see crypto coming in as a part of the infrastructure for international transfers. I don't see it replacing international transfer by itself. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of requirements in terms of like compliance and KYC that is required, especially when you're talking about companies in Brazil. You have tax related issues when you're importing or exporting goods. So the onboarding process and the registration process probably will improve, but remain quite the same in terms of validations that you need to be doing. But when you are able to use the crypto infrastructure for international transfers, I think will facilitate the process. So that's specifically to Remessa. When you talk about crypto as a whole, there's a lot of other applications to blockchain. When you talk about Bitcoin as an investment possibility, as people are discussing a lot, or all the other cryptos, I'm more skeptical about when people get very excited about all of those other cryptocurrencies that have no application or even like any subsidy. And then again, parenthesis, I am an investor at Bitcoin, but only Bitcoin today. And there's a specific belief that I have about this specifically asset class of Bitcoin. But in general, so I'm skeptical about when you see a lot of those price performance, then you see, even like Dogecoin, like, skyrocketing. So it was a joke.
What happened with Doge is insane. I mean, it lost 21% today, but it got
it's insane. And then even you
hustle.
have Elon
I
Musk
saw the
saying it is a
Saturday Night Live
hustle.
sketch, of course, yes.
And then of course now probably with all the cash that they have, they probably are trying to do something with what it was at the beginning a joke. So they're probably trying to develop something out of like Dogecoin, but it's
Yep.
why would you need it?
That's insane.
if
Had
you
you
have
bought
Bitcoin?
Doge January 1st, you would have made, and today, like maybe yesterday, you would have made 11,000%. Today, you would have made 7,000%, but still 7,000% in 5 months. It's insane.
And I'm happy for those that did it, and it's not like there's a lot of those effects when you have there's other opportunities or other moments in where that happened, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't invest. I think everyone is like independent and probably old enough. I'm just worried about like when some people that don't even understand what is happening, they ended up buying it just because of the hype, and then of course it goes up because you have more demand than you have in terms of supply at that short term, and then the market changes and then people lose money because they don't understand, or there is no fundamental to all this price performance. So specifically, I prefer to stick with Bitcoin, which I'm
Yeah.
bullish for the long
Well,
run.
yeah, I've been investing in it for the last 6 years. So start buying Ethereum at like 25 cents. Now it's $4,000, and Bitcoin was like $30 when I started, and it's I am now, as a Florida resident, I am considering selling about a third of everything I have in crypto, just to diversify a little bit more, because the gains in the last 6 months, like it's good. But I've done this at every time, when you hit 19,000 back then, like every time that it hits this like thing that feels really picky and bubbly. I mean, by the time that it's a joke on Saturday Night Live, and that isn't like really fluctuating the price, you want to be. I believe in all theses, and I will always continue to hold it. But I'm also diversification is also good to preserve, right? Like, I think you want to create wealth, you should have. It's the opposite of diversification. Diversification is a good way to preserve it, and I think with all the gains, it's good to start just preserving some of them. Not that I think that the dollar is any more real than anything else for me. They're all just illusions, but that's a whole not that could just lead us to like we can go into the Alan Watts like rabbit hole of money, but that would be, we would need like a few more hours. But so but always to wrap it up as well, I always like to end with some like rapid fire questions, and one of them is just understanding. If you could plan like your day to like a perfection, like what's your morning routine? How does that look like? Because you just had a kid, but never, and congratulations for that. So that, yes.
Yeah, but thank you very much. But I've been able to actually add him, to the routine. Not exactly, sometimes it doesn't work out very well, but pretty much I wake up around 4:30 with him. Then if I stay with him a little bit, probably half an hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes in bed he's awake, or if he wants to get out, I'll play a little bit with him, and then I start ready to train. So pretty much, take my supplements, take my morning shot. My whole preparation takes about 30 minutes.
What do you take? Like what's the Liuzzi cocktail?
Take a lot of natural substances. But I start with like warm water, lime juice, curcuma.
Curcumin, yeah. I do that as well. I do a turmeric curcumin thing with water.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turmeric, curcumin, propolis, and then ginger. So that's the first, and then I glutamine as well. And then it depends on the training that I will do. I will take something, and I like to do mixes. I'll take like black maca, ginseng, creatine, cacao powder, guaraná, cipó, and then sometimes like a kind of like a carb preparation that uses like kind of like grapefruit. You can potato. So there's specifically carbs that help you work out. But I vary a lot of those combinations. Spirulina, spirulina. I don't know how to say in English. It's spirulina. So I have all of those, and then I vary them during the morning, and then I'll go work out. If I'm biking, it's 2 hours, so from 6 to 8 a.m. If I'm training, it's from 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. Then I'm prepared to start my meetings. I start my work at 9 o'clock, but I read the news before them, organize my email, organize my day. Then I have a meeting, probably 9 to 10, and 10 to 10:30 is my alignment meetings. Then I do my work. I have free times that I book in my agenda. I try to meditate at 12:30 almost every day. Now I'm doing three times a week, like scheduled meditations, to be honest. And then if I don't have the scheduled meditation, I try to do it quickly. Um, and then my afternoon, it's really hard to prepare. I don't know. I don't have a plan. It depends on, if I'm in a funding process. It depends if what are the demands. I'll have different types of work around the afternoon. So, but I work from like 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. like straight. Now I take a break at 6:30 to give bath to my son, to Gabriel, and then 9 o'clock I'll stop, read something, and try to be at bed at 10 because I need to start over at
Very
4:30
nice.
a.m. again. Sometimes it starts at, so that's why I said that would be the perfect day. But what is happening is sometimes it's starting at 3:30 because he's waking up a little bit early, and then I have to help sometimes. But I do train every day. I only rest uh, probably Sunday, but sometimes it's an active rest, like playing tennis or something. And I try, even if it's raining, I try to do it. I like to wake up and do exercise. That's how I start my day. I start
That's
much
great.
better that way.
Awesome. Alexandre, thank you for your time. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure, and hope to see you soon in person. When I'm back in Brazil, but I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. No, probably I'll be visiting you in Miami before then. Hopefully things will get better and be able to be there, and it will be easier to travel. I want to be there visiting the ecosystem. Really excited to know how
It's
things
quite
are there.
amazing. What's happening here right now is very special because I think Miami right now is basically it's the capital. Capital is the largest arbitrage opportunity in the Western world right now, by far. San Francisco. I mean, I've lived there for 9 years. I've been here only for 2.5 weeks, but the the excitement that you have around this place and everyone wants to collaborate and get things done is remarkable. This time, I don't think it's just like a pandemic joke because the amount of people that I have met that are extremely successful and powerful that are staying here and enrolling their kids in local schools is massive. So there are about like 300 to 400 people that have a long-term plan with this part of the world. And frankly, when you realize with this, the pandemic was really what made this place possible for tech, because then now you can live this hybrid life. I continue to have a place in Palo Alto and that has an office there, but I will be going there every 6 weeks or so, and that's it. And you can totally like continue to do the things that you could do in the Bay Area by just doing that. You don't have to be based there anymore. Just life here is far better. Is way more diverse. People are nicer. They're prettier. You have more sunshine, better taxes. It's kind of like it's a far better plan, in my opinion. But this is not to put California down. I'm very grateful for the time I've had there. And, I learned tremendously. I just think that it got to a point where it's a net negative just to live there, primarily because of how much it costs and what you get in return. I mean, you and I, we grew up in Sao Paulo. My mom has been kidnapped twice in Sao Paulo. And there were moments where I was like a little more afraid of my personal security in San Francisco. I mean, what these left-wing governments did to California is just quite disappointing. And I think it's, for me, it's difficult to see myself eventually, I want to get married and have a kid and have a few kids. And then, I don't see myself doing that in California. I just, it's tough. It continue to be a very special place, and I would do a lot of business there. And I love Silicon Valley and all my friends there. But yeah.
It's sad. It's a shame. It's such a beautiful place. A lot of like nature, great, outdoor activities, but a little bit far away from here, a little bit different, time, but time zone. But
Yeah, it
it's a
is.
shame what happened.
I know you gotta go.
Pedro,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much, man.
We
Really
yes.
appreciate being here.
Valeu.